We move on to the Carolina Panthers, and I'm going to, I guess, make my pitch early on this one. I look at Carolina, and I've listened to them, and I've sort of tuned in, and I find a lot of reasons to be optimistic and hopeful that not necessarily they can win the division, but that they make a push, that in December that they'll still be playing meaningful football. The problem is, though, every time I sit back and I look at what I'm excited about, I'm excited about Bryce Young. I'm excited about the fact that when he gets better pass protection, that he doesn't get picked off as much. I think I'm right in saying he was sacked 62 times in 2023, only 29 times last year. He doubled his touchdown percentage. He scored rushing touchdowns in a way that he couldn't in 2023. And we know 2023 was a complete lost season. And it seemed like for so much of last year that was going to be the same again. But things change. We look at what else that the Panthers have done on the offense. They bring in Ted McMillan in the draft. They have Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle has come in for free agency. Trevor Etienne coming into the draft in the running game. Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette, all wide receiver. There's a lot there to be excited about if it all works with the Canales system, if it all works with the offense. And then you look at the defense and go, Jesus Christ, lads, what's happening? What's happening here? Well, a defense that was by far the worst in the league last year, and they've made a couple of moves. They made a couple of moves in the draft, bringing in Nick Scarton, edge rusher from Texas A&M, and Princely, I can't remember, Uman Milan from Ole Miss, coming in the third round as well.
Good go with that, Shane. Fair play.
I love the way we take a horrendous stab at some of these names.
I wouldn't mind. I looked up pronunciation of it earlier, and it escaped my head, so I apologize for that. They brought in Pat Jones and Tershawn Wharton in the free agency, but again, nothing lighted up. I don't know, guys, and Brian, I'll throw it to you first. The way we look at this offense and all the hope that we have around, and even just the improvements you saw firsthand in Munich, I think that was the real kind of turning point game when the Panthers went and beat the Giants last year in Germany. We see that on offense. We don't necessarily see that on defense, and I think that could potentially be their downfall as the season goes ahead.
I'll show up two players that would give me confidence. JC Horn is probably a given. Okay, he's got a big bumper contract. One player that got injured very early on in the season last year for them, who they're highly invested in, is Derek Brown. He was injured in week 1, and you wonder how well the defense could have played with him there, because he's again a marquee player that they see as a huge potential for the future. They had 32 sacks last year, third fewest in the league. That has to improve. But they're expecting Brown to come back and be fit for this season. And sometimes just getting one player back, one marquee player come back, can make a huge difference to the defense. I think offensively they've got the players. You allude to some players there. I don't think there's any names that really jump off the charts. We'd be interested to see what the rookie wide receiver can do. And I'm still not convinced that Bryce Young is this Bryce Young that we saw selected at the start of the draft, and everything has evolved, and he's turned to use corner. And he's found a way under a new head coach last year to kind of right the wrongs of the previous year. And I throw away the Germany game because you're up against a really poor Giants game, and I don't really want to be specific in calling out particular games. And he did play well over the course of the back end of the season. He looks like he's having a good camp. But this Panthers team, they will do well in their own right. They'll keep in games. They'll be tight. They'll probably shock a few teams in the division, but they just don't have enough talent. And you're talking about players like Thielen. These are all journeymen at this stage. Legette is a good player in its own right. We saw some nice pieces of him last year. Whether they can put it all together over the course of 17 games, I'm not convinced. I think ultimately they're going to end up being the team that's sitting at the bottom of this division again, unfortunately. And then I don't know where it goes from there, because there's only so many years you can talk about a new head coach and this development process and period they're going through. There's going to have to be a huge return for me to see, for Panthers fans to be sitting here next year kind of raving about this team going into the next season.
Kieran Boyle, am I drinking the Kool-Aid too much on Bryce Young?
No, I don't think so. Well, it goes back to, I was at the game New Year's Eve 2023, and the Jaguars, a bad Jaguars team, absolutely slapped around the Panthers, and Bryce Young got just beaten from pillar to post. And I sat in the press conference and looked at a dejected, almost a broken quarterback. No redeemable features. His voice was soft and quiet. Didn't have the appearance or the air of a quarterback, let alone in the NFL, let alone college. Dave Canales comes in, and he's just sprinkled his magic all over him. I mean, it was a slow start for Young last year, but that team made progression all year. I mean, remember they put the Eagles and the Chiefs real close last year. There was 2 of those games could have gone either way. The Chiefs did, but the Chiefs do. They pulled it out the hat, and the Eagles were put right to the pin of their collar that game too. So they've got the ability to pull off big wins against big teams. But again, like you said, the question is, was that Bryce Young? Was that just a flash in the pan, or was that him overachieving with a new head coach in Dave Canales, who I really like, by the way? But I like what the Panthers have done between the draft and free agency. They picked up Ted McMillan, who's a phenomenal wide receiver, huge guy. I think he's like 6'4" and a half. They've added pieces around Young on the O-line. Like Brian said, Bobby Brown's going to come back. Patrick Jones, they got from Minnesota. They got Roseboom, who I love, the linebacker from the Rams. Ashawn Robinson, they got in free agency too. So they've added a lot of good pieces that can help this team. But again, it comes down to the weapons that they have. But this team went years with Adam Thielen as the sole wide receiver, really. And they've got Leggett, and they've got Ted McMillan now, and they've got Jimmy Horn Jr. from Colorado. So they've got a lot more weapons. The question for me is, like I said earlier, is this Bryce Young the Bryce Young we'll see next year? Because he did make a lot of progression, and he did turn into a very, I don't want to say serviceable quarterback, but a respectable quarterback. Those games, if you want to look back on the Chiefs and Eagles games, he was good. He was making completions, and he was getting the best out of the players he had. Now, if you add that into the defense that's coming back, and you add that into the strengthening of the O-line and a couple of nice free agency picks, they might do some work. We're always thinking about who's that team that's going to make a surprise run, not necessarily a Commanders run, but who's going to be still in the hunt in December that nobody thought. It could be the Panthers team. I mean, they were 5-12 last year. Like I said, a couple of plays from being 7-10 maybe, or even better. So I do like them to make a leap. I think they're going to have at least 7 wins in a division that's got the Saints. The only thing is they play the AFC East and the NFC South, but that's 2 fairly difficult divisions. They may have to go up to, I can't remember the schedule if they go up to Buffalo in the winter, but still, that's 2 difficult conferences that they're going to go up against. But the questions for me is, will there be a sophomore slump from Canales? We know we've talked about what he's done with quarterbacks in the past. And is Bryce Young, was that a flash in the pan? Was that a teaser, or is that the real Bryce Young coming back with new energy, new enthusiasm, a head coach that believes in him? Is he going to do a Baker Mayfield on this kid and turn him into a real good, quarterback in the NFL? It's still a very tough division, and I don't really see them challenging for the top spot. But if you told me 7 wins, I might take the over on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Just you mentioned there in the schedule, they do play the NFC West, which is not easy the best of times. They do get to host the Bills in October. They don't have to go up to Buffalo in the wintertime, which of course for a team in the South is always a nice thing. I don't think they really have any proper winter games, apart from playing the Packers in Green Bay on the 2nd of November. Kieran O'Donovan, 7.5 wins is the over-under for the Panthers. That suggests a step forward, but not a leap forward. What way do you see this Carolina team playing out?
Yeah, well, to Kieran's point, I'm reminded of Jordan Love and how everybody was so high on him, the way he finished his first starting season as I won't call it, he wasn't a true rookie, but and then we all saw he went out and was pretty average then last year to follow it up. So look, if you're a Panthers fan, you can be hopeful about the fact that these guys played hard towards the end of the season. You've alluded to the way they ran the Eagles close. They played the Chiefs hard. They really seemed to play for Dave Canales when there wasn't a whole pile to play for except pride. So a lot to take, to give you hope. I'd categorize this wide receiving core as sneaky good. Looking at Ted McMillan and Xavier Leggett, Ted McMillan is a guy who's highly touted. As Kieran said, he's everything you read about him said he's an excellent receiver. He's big, strong, really good at contested catches. He doesn't really have that top line speed. That's seen as a potential area of weakness, whereas Xavier Leggett does have that out and out speed. So whether those 2 guys can complement each other well, Adam Thielen was a big play receiver last year, even down the stretch. He made massive plays. He seemed to just get open when Bryce Young absolutely had to have him. And one guy that we haven't mentioned is Hunter Renfrow. He's coming back off the couch. I think he was selling insurance or something last year, come out of retirement, and he's a guy who can, route running, precise routes over the middle and just getting open is his strength. And I thought he was excellent for the Raiders. I loved watching him. I'm not going to say he's going to be Julian Edelman for the Panthers, but certainly that kind of impact potential. As I said, he's maybe not exactly going to win him the division, but I think he's a guy who could really contribute. Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, nice backfield. But as you guys said, the big question is the front seven. And I think, Brian, you took my notes because I had Derek Brown. You must have had a sneak peek. I had Derek Brown here written down, and 2 years ago he was the second highest ranked run defender in the league, and so they might get something out of him to improve that defense. But there's a lot of questions, a lot of ifs about the guys that they've brought in, the free agents and the draft picks. So I think too many questions on defense. I think they'll be decent offensively. I think they'll improve, but I think they're going to give up too many points. I'm not too sure. The over under at 6.5. You said 7.5, Shane. But
sorry, yeah, my bad. Yeah,
it was at 6.5. Was it? I think they do.
Right, yeah.
I think they do well to get to it. But again, as Kieran said, the fact that they're playing the Saints in the division, I think that might give them two games of a head start. So good potential to beat that over under.
Yeah, I think my optimism was usurping what Vegas was saying there. You're right. Over under is 6.5 wins for the Carolina Panthers.